Armed conflicts can have devastating consequences for people and the environment. Many global conflicts occur in hotspots of biodiversity, and recent studies have highlighted catastrophic effects of war on animal species. But what exactly drives these outcomes for animals? War is incredibly complex and is associated with militarization and widespread societal upheaval, which can affect wildlife habitats and populations through diverse pathways. Animals can be directly affected by weaponry and combat associated with militarization. As weapons become more readily available during wartime, hunting of wild animals increases. On the other hand, the confiscation of weapons by governments or militias can reduce hunting. Animals can also be inadvertently killed by explosives or by lingering war materials. Habitats may even be intentionally destroyed as a tactical strategy. In rarer cases, military activities can create animal habitats as byproducts. Wildlife can also play a significant role in providing financial, material, or political support for military activities. Wildlife products can be easy to access and trade, and luxury products can finance wars. Animals are also killed to feed combatants in remote areas. Charismatic wildlife species may even take on a symbolic role in the war effort, for better or worse. War also weakens institutions, including governments, NGOs, protected areas, and research organizations. Their capacity to enforce resource use is seriously compromised, and this is the most commonly cited driver of wildlife declines in conflict areas. Sometimes staff are directly targeted and attacked by combatants, and other times there is simply no government capacity or funding to support enforcement, monitoring, or conservation activities. Armed conflict causes civilians to move through the landscape in unprecedented numbers, on scales from days to decades, and local to international distances. Displaced people rely more heavily on natural resources, including bushmeat, especially around refugee camps. The movement of people due to conflict may also have a positive effect on wildlife. When people avoid a militarized region, they inadvertently create wildlife refuges. Finally, armed conflict leads to widespread economic changes. War may open new wildlife trade routes as armies cross international boundaries, while other trade routes may close as transportation becomes dangerous. Conflict may also disrupt extractive industries like logging or mining, but in other cases, resource extraction may intensify to fund military activity, with implications for wildlife habitat. At a local scale, war also disrupts livelihoods and creates uncertainty and instability, which can lead to an increase in hunting for food or trade. Of course, there isn't only one pathway associated with a given conflict. Pathways often act in conjunction with one another to amplify effects of conflict on wildlife, or counteract one another's effects. And pathways span temporal and spatial scales, with positive outcomes for wildlife in one place or time coinciding with negative outcomes elsewhere as people and institutions shift during wartime. Ultimately, the drivers of conflict and socioeconomic changes may be far afield from the places where biodiversity is affected. Overall, conflict represents a major threat to wildlife and to vulnerable human populations who rely on the resources and services that biodiversity provides. So how do we conserve animals during and after war? For a given conflict, it is important to understand the key pathways linking conflict to wildlife. These pathways should then be targeted when possible. However, it may not be realistic to change the way conflict operates, and may be more feasible to mitigate the other societal effects of conflict. Pursuing institutional solutions in particular can buffer against many other pathways. For more on this topic, check out our recent publication in Frontiers in Ecology and the Environment, where we review case studies from around the world to understand the complex dynamics linking war to wildlife habitats and populations.